Welcome, everyone. Today is March 20th, 2019. This is the Evidence-Based Coaching Thought Leaders webinar. Today we have Dr. Linda Pennington. She's going to be talking about the client speaks. What do executive coaching clients say in interviews about their coaching experiences? Dr. Pennington is a graduate of the Fielding Graduate University, and I'm going to let her speak a little bit more about her background as a way of introduction. But welcome, Dr. Pennington. We're excited to have you.
Hello, everyone. I started out in life as an activist in the feminist movement, actually, and in my work life, and then I went to work for Citicorp for a while in HR. I then moved into running large law firms in New York and Philadelphia, and eventually I decided that that was kind of boring and that I should go back to school. And once I started going back to school, first for my master's at the University of Pennsylvania, I just couldn't stop going back to school. So I went to Fielding for my doctorate, and I'm very happy that I did. So tonight I'm going to show you, talk a little bit about the research that I did for my dissertation, but also show you videos of interviews, excerpts from interviews that I did with coaching clients. So I guess I'd like to start with the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation about the client speaks. So slide 2, the point of my research was to find out what coaching clients have to say about their coaching relationships. But especially I was focused on the bond between the coach and the client in their relationship. What was important to me in doing this research was to find out what clients said in their own voice. What I found when I went looking for this subject, what do clients say? I found that I really didn't find much where clients were had real voice. There were quantitative studies of what clients checked off on checklists about their satisfaction with their coaching engagements, and studies of that kind. But there really wasn't anything where the client themselves were talking about the engagement in their own voice without any sort of direction. So that's what I wanted to do in my research, and that's what you're going to see tonight. I also wanted to find out a little bit about whether the clients would talk about the organizational context, and that did show up to some extent. So the basis, theoretically, of my research was that the working alliance, which is strong in therapy, is also used in coaching. And this is really the relationship in therapy has been studied a great deal, and it's called the working alliance, and it's different. The relationship and the study of the relationship is different from the study of what actually happens in terms of the therapeutic result and what they do in therapy. But the alliance is considered how they work together. And in coaching, we've transmuted this, the working alliance in therapy, to the coach-client relationship. And what we're focused on in studying the coach-client relationship is the tasks that are performed by the coach and the client, the roles that they play, and the bond between them. And my focus was on the bond of the coach and the client in this study. So the 3 theories that I chose to support the bond in coaching was attachment theory, social constructionism, and storytelling. Attachment theory is a psychological theory that basically says your ability to have strong attachments and trust in others as you develop into adulthood is based on what kind of attachment you had with your parents early on in your development. I'm making that very simple. It's a lot more complicated than that, but this is only an hour long, so we need to get on with it. Social constructionism is a theory that posits that basically there is no actual reality except reality that is constructed between human beings and among human beings in relationship. And so my view of this with regard to the executive coach and client relationship is that while they are in relationship together and while they are in coaching session, that they create their own reality together in this relationship and in their coaching sessions. And third, I wanted to use storytelling because storytelling is very important in coaching. If you coach, you know that what happens is a lot of stories coming from your client, and then your reaction to those stories, and you're helping them perhaps unpack those stories. So storytelling is very important in coaching, and I wanted to use that lens as well. So a little bit about the demographics, so you know who was in this study. The coaches were pre-qualified by experience and or education, meaning that I used coach nominators to produce clients, and the coaches themselves had to be coaches who were either ICF certified, faculty in college and university coaching programs, or graduates of college or university coaching programs. So the clients were recruited through these qualified coach nominators. I interviewed 10 clients. There were 9 coaches represented of the 10 clients. All but one had direct reports. You can see the age range was 25 to 68. And the group was ethnically and gender diverse. And I had 6 female coaches and 3 males. So it was a pretty fair representation, I think. It was clearly a qualitative research study. I really only asked one question, which was, tell me the story of your coaching engagement. You'll see me in these videos every once in a while because I do comment or move the story along a little bit when they say something that I think I should pick up on. But I really didn't use an interview protocol at all. I just asked them to tell me their story. What I found was that the coaching clients demonstrated really strong attachment to their clients. The coaching clients showed strong attachment to their coaches with very high levels of trust. The clients also really did feel as if they created personal worlds with their coaches. They talked about that. Some clients also talked about the organizational setting and how the organizational context, in particular the culture of the organization, affected their coaching. So that was pretty interesting, and as I'm going to say shortly, I think that's a particularly interesting field for more research in this area from coaching clients. So these are some quotes from the videos. But the quotes, one of the things I found in writing the dissertation is that I used so many quotes from the videos. And what I felt was, when I was writing the dissertation, is this stuff is so dead on paper. And when you see the videos and when you've actually seen them, like, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've watched these videos, but it's got to be in at least 100 times. But when you see them, you see, the living person actually talking about it. It's very different from seeing the data on paper like this. So I think there's a need for more qualitative coaching client research. I think that this study does show that the bond is an important factor in the success of the engagement. And I think it is important to look at the organizational context And I hope that someone does that kind of study in their dissertation in the future. As I said, these are the implications for further research. I think generational studies might be interesting. I had a wide range of ages in my study. And I think that in coaching education, and since I teach at Penn, the factors that I see from this study that I can use is how will this affect how we train people in coaching, how we can train them to use themselves and their relationship with the client to further the client's goals in coaching. Unconditional positive regard, how do you develop that? How do you develop trust? I think that instead of focusing a great deal on theories and the variety of different theories that you can read about, I think these are the kinds of things that we really need to make sure we're spending a lot of time on in coaching education. And I think practitioners can look at this, and it's a good reminder of why you coach. It's also motivation. I think that it could be used to a certain extent with organizations, so that organizations can understand what coaching is really about. Large organizations do understand it, but a lot of small organizations still do not understand how clients respond to coaching, and these videos actually show that, demonstrate that. So I thank you for watching this tonight. And we're going to look at some of the videos from the clients now. And I'm going to introduce client number 1 when we get that up on the screen. So this is Matt. He's 29 years old. He's the executive vice president of his family owned lumber company in the middle of Pennsylvania. And he's going to talk about his coaching engagement, which is, I think, an engagement that he's had for about a year now.
Listening. He's one of the best listeners that I've ever come in contact with. Mm-hmm. He really listens deeply before responding. Mm-hmm. He's not giving me his off the bookshelf response. It's really tailored to what I need. Maybe I'll come into a conversation with him and want a tactic, or I want an answer that is directly oriented to the project that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. And he'll want to understand where I'm coming from rather than just taking it in. So I wanted to go live with a digitalization project in our office. Mm-hmm. And he, instead of just saying, "Oh, that's great," and then giving me some ideas around that project, he wanted to know further, why do you want to do that project? What are the end goals besides just digitalization? What are your people going to be thinking about this? How are they going to perceive it? And then instead of focusing on those tactics regarding what software to use, it was, what are the people going to be thinking about this? How do we get them involved in the project and help with the emotional side of the human aspect of the project? So
running things by him, why would you use him in particular, or instead of someone else that you talk to?
He has, over the course of our relationship, I didn't use the laser calls at first, but over the course of our scheduled 1-hour sessions, I was building trust and really beginning to appreciate the wisdom that Phil brings to the table. I feel like I have a kung fu ninja in my corner with me before I go into important conversations that I might be having with my president or someone else in the company.
Mm-hmm. And yours is a family company, so are you a member of the family?
I am. I'm the fourth generation, and there is no one else in the family that's actively involved in the business.
Except you now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. That's a legacy, and a legacy that you must feel some responsibility for.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the only other family member that is involved in the business is my grandfather, who's the chairman. So he might come in once a week or once every other week to check in.
Right, but he's not there day to day. He's not running the day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
More an overseer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Phil has played an amazing role for me to appreciate the gravity of my responsibility in the business. And whether it's for the shareholders or for the employees or for the leadership team, and how I dance with the leadership team so that I'm not stepping on people's toes and we're not creating conflict within the company. I see it as something that is crucial for anyone that is going from an employee into a C-suite role or VP role of any kind. It's so important to understand ourselves and realize the impacts that and unintended consequences that come with the role. I lost my mom about a year ago, and when I lost her, he was such a wonderful sounding board for me, and his advice was just so spot on, and he was giving me resources for my personal life that was beyond what I felt like he knew me inside and out, and it just really escalated my trust with him. And I hope that, and I would want to keep that relationship going in the future, because there's going to be inevitable conflict in life personally as well, and I can't imagine not having him on my side and cultivating that relationship for future needs. It's definitely a worthwhile investment for me. I think just even simply the conversations that I have with Phil has changed the way or improved the way that I speak with other people in a professional and in a personal setting. And even my wife has said, "Are you pulling a Phil on me?" I haven't told Phil that yet, but I'm able to ask questions to get people to where I'm thinking without directing it. It's really helped when I come into situations that my limbic side of my brain wants to knee jerk and say one thing, but if I try to think what would Phil say in this situation, it helps me get on the balcony and come from a more mature role.
So client number 2 is a woman who is a legal administrator in one of the largest law firms in New York. She's in her 60s.
I think from the start, it was a very comfortable and open relationship. Philetta was a person who was very forthright, and but also, I would say she wasn't dictatorial in any way about behavior or what should or shouldn't be. She was a good listener, but she was somebody who was really able to help me think about the way that I was entering situations or dealing with the people who I felt either difficult or perhaps inadequate in their roles. So it was important for my professional growth that I be able to learn new ways to interact with people, manage my own personality type, which is more of a steamroller approach than it is one of being circumspect and waiting for people to catch up. But I learned through my meetings with her, or conversations, and also 360 requires feedback from the people. You lay out a group of people from whom you would like her to solicit feedback for your 360 review, and I found that, with the exception of perhaps one response, which was important for me to have. And so when we would have, for instance, our director meetings, and people would be him-hawing about what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and then, the executive senior partner and the chairwoman are waiting for some intelligent responses from the group, I would just get so impatient that I would just start, telling what it should be and how it should happen, and everyone else would be glaring at me for, first of all, having the nerve to speak up like that, except for the chairwoman and the senior managing partner. They were happy someone was speaking up. And while they didn't always exactly agree, they were responsive and positive about my input, but my colleagues were not. And so Soletta really helped me figure out how to hold back for at least the initial moments of silence and discomfort when we have two senior people sitting there waiting for something to come from their group who's supposed to be able to run their firm, and nothing's happening. And but she taught me that it didn't always have to be me. And then, in fact, at that point, by that time, both the chairwoman and the senior operating partner knew that I probably did have answers, and that eventually I would bring them, or they would just specifically wait and then ask me. And so that was really, really a difficult thing for me to do. But she let me know that it was really important to work my way through the uncomfortable silences and, my just pure impatience for these people, to allow them to either come forward or realize that they had missed the boat themselves. So whereas I was taking always sort of jumping in, and then they could use me as a reason why they weren't more effective. It was fun. She was relaxed. She was not judgmental. She would ask me questions that, would actually make me laugh at myself. Like she'd say, well, what is it that you're thinking about, your entry into this role? And I said, I feel like I'm always the person who's rocking the boat, and everybody else is holding on to the sides for dear life. And I said, but nobody else will ever do it. So she said, well, but why do you think you have to be the one? I mean, can't you ever just, sort of, let's talk about what other ways there could be for you to get people to let go of the sides and, maybe work with you so you're moving forward instead of rocking the boat side to side. So, she just had a way about her that that was, it was good, it was constructive, it was fun. And she was, first of all, she was very good at what she did. But second of all, I think she genuinely liked working with people like myself, and she was a human being. She was just down to earth. She knew the group. Well, for one thing, I really trusted her. I don't know if I use the word trust, but I totally trusted her. And from the day I began my interviewing process with this firm, with 10 different partners and former heads of the firm sitting at the table with me, I always had the trust and the confidence and the cred, if you will, of the partners. So most of the partners, of course, you could never say everyone, and we had multiple offices, yes. So each office had their own issues of status and ego, etc. But that's typical for any firm. But Soletta knew the culture of the firm, She knew the culture of the different offices, and she knew a lot of the individual partners because that is where she had begun her relationship with the firm. And so, you know, there were so many times when she would, without naming any names, she would share stories of challenge and how people overcame things within the environment. And she knew very clearly that sort of paternalistic culture of a firm, no matter how big, that they had, which protected some of the worst performing people in the firm. Some were partners, some you were associates, but many, many, many were the staff and managers in my own group. And so I trusted her because she shared that she understood the culture. She, without naming names, she talked about, you know, very specific instances, and she clearly acknowledged the validity of my challenges. I felt very strongly that while I needed to you know, improve and build up, refine skills to be successful in that environment, I felt like Selena was there for me, period. End of story. Well, I think it did. It was, for me, it was effective. I think it had the results that I wanted. I think the firm saw the results of it, and I think that it gave me a different kind of confidence to manage situations that were difficult, and or to with confidence proceed to either move people up or out. So because I had learned a new way to interact with people, I also was able to communicate to them along the way, you know, what the results were going to be if we weren't able to move forward. So I think that was a kinder, gentler way of being the director of a large group of people.
So client number 3 is Dean. He's a guy who was laid off from a previous position and had coaching as a result of that. And I think he tells his story pretty well on his own, even in this relatively small clip of his interview.
I found, you know, the more I talked, because I have been in other sessions before where I felt I was doing all the talking. One of the things I liked about my particular coach is that, you know, really listened, but a lot of it was interactive. There was a lot of back and forth, making sure that he understood, but also sort of giving me his observations about sort of, you know, here's where I think, you know, your strength is, and maybe some suggestions he would give me in terms of, you know, where you should focus. But what I really like most about it, sort of the more that we got together, there was a feeling of trust with one another. And it made me look forward to the next session, because after each session, I felt like there was a big load off my shoulders, which, you know, comes with coaching, because yeah, you do a lot of talking, but there was what my particular coach did, that there was something about it that was very encouraging to me as well, where they would actually speak almost words of affirmation, you know, based on sort of what you shared, and picking out those strengths and, you know, maybe even some dangers to watch out for. So I really felt uplifted after each session, and look forward to the next one. I think I felt like, it's hard to explain, but it was a very safe place to share. I felt that there was a warmth, there was an understanding, but there was some sort of genuineness that they wanted to help. It wasn't just, he wasn't just spending time. He actually seemed genuinely interested and interested in wanting to help me, but also to, my success would be partly, his success as well. And, I think trust was built by, hearing him talk about sort of, him understanding. Like, he didn't go into a dialogue about, well, this was my experience, and, bring it to, himself. But he kind of kept it to sort of, okay, the focus is on you, and it's about you, and I'm here to help you. So to me, that sort of built trust, and it also built relationship, because, I felt that the next session, he would remember those things I said, and each session would build upon that, which I think, so there was some trust from the beginning, but it grew into deeper trust as the sessions went on, as given, the feedback that I got from him, he was listening to me, he was understanding what my concerns were, and, he would bring them forward. I wouldn't have to, well, you remember when we talked about this last time? He would know, and he would be the one that would bring that up and say, okay, remember you said this last time, how are you feeling about, what you said, or what have you done about it? There was, real situations that I was facing, the nervousness of putting a resume together, and, the coach even, offered to look at my resume and give me some feedback, which was great. And then sort of leading up to, there was 2 interviews that I did, and there was one interview where I think, coaching and interacting actually helped me build confidence to go into that interview. But also it was great after the interview to just sort of debrief on sort of, here's how the interview went, here's the sorts of questions, here's how I answered them. And he was able to get feedback from that. And it was almost like just having someone in your corner, almost like a cheerleader, cheerleading you on, and just being there with you. Like, I felt like it was, okay, I'm not alone in this. I mean, there's other peers and, family and friends you can talk to,
Right.
But it was just sort of a dedicated professional relationship that I really valued, because it came in a time where I needed it. Even looking back, even if I wasn't going through that transition, and just from a perspective of wanting to better myself, I think it still would have been very advantageous. But I still look back at those coaching times where I was going through, a lot of uncertainty in applying for new jobs. I felt, very prepared going in, just because, it even helped talking about some of the questions that could be asked. So basically, to answer the question, I think the end goal was to find new employment. And I had an experience a few years before that where a coach was actually going through a certification process. And so I had, sort of the advantage of comparing the two.
I see.
And the biggest difference was the first coach I had was very good, but I felt, quite frankly, I felt exhausted sometimes, because it would be sort of just me talking the whole time. And there wasn't a lot of interaction. Like, there was some, but I felt with the last coach, the coach that we're talking about right now, it felt more like a relationship. It felt like I could talk, there would be a little bit of feedback. At the end, there would be sort of, like I said, I don't know what the right word would be for it, but it felt very affirming, everything that we talked about, and kind of picking out what the positives or the strengths are in the person, or what he saw, and sort of, here, I think this is great because you can build on this, and this is what I'm seeing with what you're talking. This is sort of what the strength I see, when you manage people, and this is how I see you. I think, so it was more like that. I didn't get as much feedback, and what I really liked is some of the feedback, and just sort of a perspective where you could sit back and, here's what this person is seeing based on what you said. but in a very positive manner or nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess there's some aspect of, you know, there's different people that you feel safe with immediately. And I guess it's, you know, in a coach, you'd want to make sure that, you know, they're friendly, but it's sort of, you know, what atmosphere are they bringing? Are they here for themselves? You know, for instance, you know, I'm trying to get my certification, and, you know, I need people to, you know, subjects to, you know, to get my certification. You know, I think people can sense that. You know, I sensed that a little bit when I had sort of a first coach that, you know, they were there for themselves. And the, you know, the coach that we're talking about today, even though I think, you know, to a certain degree, he probably needed, you know, subjects as well, but I never got that feeling from this particular person. It was just sort of, you know, this person really wants to help and actually, you know, do, you know, what coaching is meant to be, and that's, you know, to encourage someone to meet their goals. So, and, you know, I think the other thing, and I shared a little bit before, is that the first experience I had, like I said, I felt exhausted. I would, you know, talk, and they would ask probing questions. Well, tell me more. Why do you think that? Or why do you feel like that? And I just felt that I was being examined and going down a path where I didn't know where it was going to lead. And I felt like I was just sort of talking to talk almost, because, you know, to fill up the time. I think the key difference in my last experience with this coach was that there was some interaction. There was sort of, you know, here's what I'm observing, but I want to tell you, you know, something that I'm seeing that's, you know, really positive in you, or what you said about the situation, or how you handled this situation. Like, this is, you know, this is the kind of leader I think you are. And these kind of leaders tend to sort of sometimes have these, like, it was some really, you know, cogent and timely advice that, you know, I think it was that positive feedback that really sort of, okay, I'm sharing with you based on what you're saying. You know, I know that you understand what I just said, but you're also sort of, you know, making me think of things I didn't think about before.
Right.
They're positive things. They weren't like, well, you know, you said this, I don't think you know, like it never felt negative. So it was just, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is just there was some two-way communication there. And I think that's what I like the most.
Client number 4 is Mary. She is a development director for a large healthcare center. And she's thinking about retiring, but she'd like to get some things done before she leaves.
I don't form relationships all that easily, but Charlene is a very warm person. And so it was very easy to respond to her, you know, to her outreaches and stuff like that. And, you know, she sent me a postcard from Southeast Asia and, you know, stuff like that. That was just really nice. And today I got an email from her, you know, even though our engagement has been over for more than half a year. So, you know, it developed in that way. I greatly appreciated working with her and just the kind of person she is. So, and she was very kind and very warm to me. So I appreciated that. Yeah, I would say that there was no question that I trusted her implicitly. And she, you know, she built that trust from the beginning. And I think one of the things she did without saying it was, you know, provided a safe structure. I don't particularly like it when someone says, I want this to be a safe space for you. And I'm just like, really? You know, it's not the way I think. It's not the way I talk. But at the same time, that happened anyway because of the way she approaches a person that she's coaching.
Client number 5, Kurt, is a partner in a large law firm in Philadelphia, although the law firm is national. And he had just been appointed to be the managing partner of the office, a position he took reluctantly, as you'll see in his video.
That process was different than I expected because I only typically worry about my partners, right? I mean, that's 90% of my day-to-day. The people that are complaining, the people that are pushing me to do X, Y, or Z, that's 90% of the battle. But I felt like he was going to get a much fuller picture by dealing with a lot of the other people in the office. And he was really not just like business staff, like Susan or Cynthia or whatever, but like, you know, I think he talked to like our office services person or our accounting person or, you know, all of those types of people, which was really useful. And I think the third step of it, what was probably the most valuable for me, was going through the 360 itself and reading the comments and the things that you know came out of it. And for me, there were many things, not just one, that I didn't appreciate, and I never, like, no one would have ever told me.
That's great.
Independently. One thing that I can remember right offhand is I was very clear to you when we first met. I was clear to Michael that I really didn't have much of an interest in doing this, and I was a reluctant warrior to do it. And while that's true, that I still am very much that, you know, I'm not like, the sooner I can get out of this, the better for me. I now know that I should never say that within the office. And that was one of the things that came out of the deal with Tony in that respect. So overall, I felt that that was very useful. To me, the most value of it were the things that you don't know, that people won't tell you about yourself and how they perceive you. How you now step back and think about how people perceive you and what they will tell, frankly, a complete stranger to them.
Yes.
That they won't tell you.
Yes. In fact, they're dying to tell the complete stranger.
Yeah, like, you know, it's really kind of incredible. Yeah. And I thought his process of not just taking like one person that's pissed off at you and, you know, reverberating that quote or whatever back, he basically said, I only gave you something here if it was a synthesis of like 3 people.
Correct.
That basically said it within the universe. You can't fix what you don't know about.
Exactly.
So that's kind of how I viewed it. And I found that more than anything else, more than understanding how I scored on the 30-minute personality test that you had to do and everything else, that was the most value to me. Understanding how, you know, people perceive you. So anyway, that's what was different about it. And he has a really good way about him to do this. You know, I mean, if you had told me at the beginning of this process that I would pay this much money for something therapy related, it's crazy. I would never have believed it. But I felt like from this perspective, it was really useful to do. And I also felt like I had to do it as a commitment to the job. That something that if I couldn't do this, then, you know, you're really not committed to it, you know? So, and one of the things I learned from him is you may not want to do it, but the inherent competitive nature of me was insistent that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. and commit 100% to it. And so I feel like I've now gotten over that. And even though I won't miss it, you know, like I could never do this anywhere near the length of time Michael has done it, or I know I could never do it. It's just not me. That being the case, I can survive it for a few years, and I also won't look like I'm constantly complaining about it to everybody else.
Right.
So within the office structure, he's just really, you know, was really terrific. I connected with him almost immediately, and felt like he understood, you know.
Mm-hmm. So before, Terry, before I start on client number 6, I have 6, 7, and 8, and I'm aware of the time. So I guess I'm asking whether we should stop here and talk about the videos that you have seen.
Yeah, I think that would be good because we have about 10 minutes left, so that'll give folks a few minutes to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Does that work for you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent. So if folks would like to ask a question, feel free to go ahead and bring your video up and unmute yourself, and then we can hear from you your questions.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. No,
So I really appreciate your research, especially when it comes to the qualitative research, because I think I really, really appreciate qualitative research. But as I'm starting my coaching practice, I do see that there's an emphasis on quantitative. And so I'm wondering how you use quantitative research to support your findings. If you were like presenting this to an organization, how would you use that? Or do you just use the qualitative research?
I wouldn't even attempt to. I don't have any quantitative research. I mean, I have
Oh.
clients. It's not quantitative. It's not enough of a sample to be quantitative research, even if I wanted to use it that way. But the other thing is that I wouldn't be interested in using quantitative research in terms of trying to convince some organization that they should provide coaching for their people. Because I don't think that coaching can be, I personally don't think coaching can be evaluated in a quantitative way.
That's interesting. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Zenobia. Any other questions for Dr. Pennington? There's Carol.
Hi, Linda. It's Carol Nesland. How are you?
Hi, Carol.
I'm here at Fielding in part because of you. So thanks again in person, because we haven't had a chance to talk since I actually decided to jump in. Are you going to talk a little bit about the findings from, you know, all of the, I hear themes, but I'm kind of wondering what advice you would have for us based on how these clients talk to you about the relationship, and therefore how we can kind of apply it.
So I think that what came out in all of the interviews very strongly was the use of this word safe. I think almost everyone said it either directly or indirectly. But even in the clips that I showed tonight, almost everyone used the word safe in their interview. And so I guess that my view would be that a lot of people see coaching as having some risk to it, that you're putting yourself out there. And this is my interpretation of, you know, the videos, obviously, and what I've read about people who commit to coaching as clients. And I think that that being able to make progress as a client has a lot to do with your relationship with the coach, obviously, and your ability to trust them and their ability to create a safe space for you, the client, to grow. So how do we teach people who want to be coaches to be safe? I think that's complicated. I think it's very complicated. But I guess what I'm saying is that in my teaching, I think that in educating coaches, that a large part of what we need to do is have them understand themselves very well and understand how they can help others and what helping behavior actually looks like through practice.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, I also heard a lot of comments just in those short video clips that make me think that a big part of that is like genuine curiosity. Like as they all describe their coaches, they describe that this person seemed to genuinely care about them, which concerns me that there might be coaches who don't demonstrate genuine curiosity and care. But it does, it speaks to this idea that we do need to think about self as instrument, right?
Yes, I think self as instrument is a huge part of being a coach, obviously, and also in educating coaches and making people understand what that means. Because if you just say to people who don't know about coaching, you have to use yourself as instrument. You know, people look at you as if you're, what does that mean? So we really have to educate people who want to do coaching and want to do it in the right way, how to use themselves as instruments. And I think one of the clips showed, actually, I think it was Dean, who said that that his first coach was there for himself because he needed the ICF certification. And I thought that was interesting because he recognized, he could see that. He could see that it wasn't really about him. And then his second experience showed him the contrast, that this next coach, who actually in the rest of the interview I discovered had formerly been a member of the clergy, was actually there for Dean.
Yeah, interesting. Well, thank you for sharing your research. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's fun to talk about it, now that I don't have to actually do it anymore.
So, Dr. Pennington, we had one comment from the chat room, and it was hearing that from the videos that clients valued advice giving, and it was making this participant wonder about ICF stance against advice giving. Any comment that you have on that as a coach, educator, and researcher?
Well, I guess I would say that, first of all, we don't know whether it was really advice. That's the word that they used, but I don't think we know whether it was advice. And I hewed very closely to what my research question was, which is, what do clients say? So I heard that a couple of times in the interviews, and I decided not to pursue it, to even clarify the words that they were using. I obviously there's an idea out there that coaches are giving advice, and we all know that that's not what real coaching is. But whether the clients necessarily understand it that way, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you. We have time for one more question. Anyone else like to come forward and turn on the video and audio to ask Dr. Pennington one last question? So if not, I do have one final question for you.
I knew you would.
Great, excellent. You can count on me, right? So my question is, based on all this research, what do you think they pointed out as the primary value of working with an executive coach?
I think it really came across as in most of the interviews that the coach helped them know themselves better, understand themselves better, know their weaknesses, know their blind spots, and in a way that no one else could do that. Because it's not that they did say, some of them did say in interviews that they'd heard some of the feedback that was gathered before, but they dismissed it because the source wasn't valid, wasn't a source they could believe. But when feedback is actually gathered and it comes from multiple people and it's anonymous, they recognize it. The clients recognize it. And they also felt, I think a lot of them felt that the coach got to know them so well that even without the feedback, say feedback wasn't developed, which it wasn't in all of these coaching engagements, they felt that the coach knew them so well, the coach was able to get them to talk about how they needed to improve.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for attending and presenting tonight. We really enjoyed hearing about your research and being able to see firsthand some of these powerful videos that you have created. So again, we really appreciate your time and energy. So thank you again. We look forward to our continued relationship and any other insights you might want to share with us later. So thank you again.
You're welcome. It was fun to do.
Great. So I do have a couple of announcements for those who are interested in learning a little bit more about what we're doing at Fielding. We have a website called coach.fielding.edu, and you can watch all of our Thought Leaders videos by clicking on the Thought Leaders button, and we will be posting Dr. Pennington's video here as well. We also do every month what's called the Professional Series videos, and these are panels of experts from a variety of fields, and we have one of these videos next Wednesday. So if you'd like to join us for that webinar, please feel free to do that. On our blog, we post all of the upcoming events. So we have one on archetypal energy, and also looking at coaching for health, which is the one we will be doing a week from today on March 27th. We'll have three prominent leaders in coaching, Janet Ottersberg, Nazir Umrani, and Lisa Perlman, talking about their work in coaching in the health field and wellness field. So we hope you can join us in the webinar for next week. We also have an upcoming conference called the Evidence-Based Coaching Conference and Alumni Reunion on Friday, May 10th and May 11th. So come out to Santa Barbara and join us. It is open to anyone who would like to hear more about evidence-based coaching. You can buy tickets now from our website at ebc-conference.fielding.edu. So we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at the conference. So thanks for attending tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next time.